Okay.
Okay, the tool that I'm going to present today is called SYserver or SYNet Server version 2.0.3.3.
Eh, ¿Tú entiendes inglés o necesitamos traducir todo?
Es mejor si lo traducimos a el clase a español.
Verónica, ¿tú sí entiendes inglés o necesitas
Sí.
que...?
No,
Sí,
sí lo
Yo creo que
entiendo. Lo que pasa es que no lo hablo muy bien y por eso no lo hablo.
Okay.
pero
Yeah,
si Odette habla...
she mostly understand everything. The problem is that she lacks of practice on the speaking. So go ahead and do the training in English, and Veronica will tell us if she lose track of something.
Okay.
Ok, muy bien, Verónica, si por favor dinos si hay algo el cual no entiende y lo repetimos en español. Yo voy a pedir que Odette habla despacio y seguimos así, y si tenemos que cambiar de modo y traducirlo está bien, no es ninguna molestia. Nosotros tenemos muchos socios en varios países en Latinoamérica y estamos bien acostumbrados. Y aparte, en mi opinión, el español suena mejor. Pero if we speak slowly, Veronica understands. If there's something she doesn't understand, we will just translate that.
Ok,
All right,
gracias.
so you're welcome. So basically, SYserver can do several things for you. It is a .NET application or service, which means that you don't have to have the interface running on the screen. It can run as the background as a service. And I'm going to show you that there is a service installed with the software called SYserver.net. Right here. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is an XP machine?
No, this is Windows 7.
Windows 7, okay.
It can be run on XP machine as well. Okay, so the main operation on SYserver is the working mode, which we call listener. When you click on Start Listen here on the top left corner, SYserver on the server on my machine right now is opening a port. A specific port that we used to use is 3734, and waiting for communication from any terminal on the network. Right now, I'm going to stop it because there is some activity which I would like to explain. You can see that there is a new connection from terminal 10.10.10.128, which is one of the two terminals that I have connected to my system. And the next line is plus N01, which means this is a heartbeat from the terminal. And I'm going to explain what heartbeat is later on. And then we see that there is a connection from a second terminal, 10.10.10.89, with the same activity, another heartbeat. And then we see disconnect from both terminals, 89 and 128. So SYserver is working in listen mode right now, waiting for any information from our terminals. The first one that we just seen is the heartbeat. The second one is a query, meaning is we program the clock to send questions to the database. such as, is this batch number valid, yes or no? Am I allowed to swipe on this terminal, yes or no? And am I allowed to swipe at this point of time? Is this my shift, yes or no? Can I open the door to access the building, yes or no? Any particular door. So soon I'm going to show you how the query is being sent from the terminal and captured by SYserver, and how the response back from SYserver look like on the screen. The third kind of data coming out of the clock to SYserver is data transaction, which means it's a final record that you will take and implement into your tables, into your database, such as final in or out transaction, or break or return, or switch department, or switch job during the day. Veronica, is everything clear so far, or do you need us to translate some of it?
No, it's okay.
It's okay, good. In order to... Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to ask if, so it is possible for the SYserver to communicate with several types of different terminals models?
Absolutely. SYserver can communicate with any SY7XX series clocks. 785, 765, 745, 777, and 715. Okay. And SY400 as well for access control. So in order to capture the heartbeat and the data transactions, there's no need to do anything from your end, meaning is we don't need to communicate with a database to validate transactions. But in order to respond to queries from the clock, we do need to communicate with your database. The way we are communicating with the database is by using a DLL that you will most likely write because you know your database more than anyone else. You know exactly in which table the data exists, in what format, and how to respond to my query. Currently, I'm using a demo DLL that always replies with accepted OK message, which means I'm validating the transactions from the clock, and I also sending back accepted message to display on the clock display. Now, this message can be any message that you will decide to reply back from your table. It could be a name of the employee. It could be a message that you want the employee to see his supervisor because he wants to update him with some information. It could be a list of jobs or departments that you would like the employee to select from for the next activity. But the simple demo that I have right now is always replying with accepted. Someone is moving something there all the time, and it's very disturbing. Can you ask them to start doing it?
Ok, hay un poco de estático, hay un problema con el teléfono, es como hay movimiento. ¿Se escucha?
Sí.
Sí, ok, está bien. Nada más que hubo interferencia y no sabemos si se escucha, pero sí se escucha bien.
Sí, sí se escucha bien.
Ok. All right. So these are the main activities of SYserver.net. In addition, you can initiate communication to the clock from the server, like Syncomm does. If you want to manually perform a communication activity, you can go to activities right here and, for example, get status from the clock. And right now, these two lines present the status of my my two terminals, the date, the time, the firmware version of the clock, the terminal type, the information of the clock memory, and so forth and so on. You can also collect and clear manually from the terminal rather than working in listen mode. But I'm sure that you will not use that option because you will get this information on the fly. When an employee swipes his badge, you will either get a query or a data, depend on the clock application that you will write for the clock. You can program the clock, you can send date and time, you can manage fingerprint templates, and everything that you can do with Syncomm, you can do with SYserver.
Okay.
The next thing I'm going to show you is the query coming from the clock and the response back from the server. So I'm going to take one of my terminals and punch in with badge number 123.
Okay.
Okay, I'll clear the screen and I'll do it again. And then I'll stop the listener so it won't be interfere with other transactions or records. Let's start with line number 3. Line number 3 show a connection from terminal 10-10-10-89 on this date and this time. The next line is the query. Everything that starts with a plus is information retrieved from the terminal or being sent from the terminal. So plus Q, Q stands for query, and then I have the firmware version of the clock, 0821F2, and then I have the function key that I use, A100, and then I have the badge number 123. In this application, I'm adding some spaces because sometimes I'm using longer badges, so it will fit this field. Then I have the date, 2010-1103, and the next is the time, 10:19 seconds. That's the query from the server, from the clock. Now the clock is waiting for the server to respond back with an answer. Is this a good transaction? Can I validate it or not? So the next line is the response from the server, starting always with minus. Minus capital Q for the query. And then I have the message accepted, which the clock will display on its own display. The next line is the terminal, starting with the plus again, responding back, I got your message. It's a confirmation that the server shouldn't try to send this answer back again because there is a retry mechanism on the server. So if the clock will not confirm that it received the answer, it will not send back the query, the confirmation, and the server will send again the same answer until it will be answered or a timeout has been reached. And the last line is the disconnect from the clock because there is no more information needed to be sent back and forth. So we close the port, which is the connection between the clock and the server. Now you can see that the response time for the query is less than 100 milliseconds, from 10:18:49 and 286 milliseconds to 10:18:49, 322 milliseconds. It's about 50 50 milliseconds for the server to respond back to the terminal. Don't forget that this DLL does nothing. It's always replying back with OK and a message, accepted. Your DLL might take more time to access your database, find the information, and bring it back to me. The average process time for the DLL, from our experience, is 200 milliseconds. Again, we are talking about online communication with real-time communication to the server under 1 second to validate transactions. Is this clear so far?
Yes, it is. One of the questions that the customer is going to throw on us, on the side of the telecommunication department, it's how much data will be sent by each terminal per transaction. So if I just look at the transactions here, for each transaction, every swipe, it's about, what, 50 bytes, something like that?
Yes, less than 50 bytes, yes, that's correct.
Less than 50 bytes, yeah. So taking in account all the control, the data that, with the control, handshake and everything will be maximum of 50 bytes, I believe. So it's a fairly minimum data transfer.
Right. Correct. Now, let me show you what is going to happen when I'm creating a transaction when the listener is not working, which means it could be that there is a network maintenance. It could be that someone disconnected the cable from the clock. It could be that there is a maintenance work on the server itself. So the server is not available to respond back to the terminal question. So I'm going to stop the listener to simulate a network issue, and then I'm going to make a punch on my terminal. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, because I want to demonstrate what's going to happen when the terminals are in offline mode because any reason. So I'm just trying to punch here for in, and the terminal has a timeout of 3 seconds. And after 3 seconds, my application captured the transaction as offline. And now when I operate the listener, you will see the transaction flying into my computer. There you go. I'm going to stop it just to explain what happened just now. The terminal that I used to enter my punch was 10.10.10.128, and you see that the connection established on 10.25.11 and 564 milliseconds. The next one is a plus D transaction, which means it's an offline record. It's a data that was captured when the clock wasn't online with the server. And Veronica, you should be familiar with this structure because this is what you get when you collect data from the clock. You get the ID, you get the firmware version, and then the date, and then you get the function key, A100, and then the badge number 1 that I was using, and at the end you get the time, 10:25 and 59 seconds. The next line is the response back from the server saying, I got your message, I got your transaction, you can remove it from your memory, the terminal memory. And then the terminal replies back to me, to the server, saying, I got your confirmation, I'm deleting the record, and then I'm closing the port. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Yes. Something else that I'm looking at, it's the port within the the IP, what's the port number? Because it varies, right?
Let me show you. Under communication, you decide what port your server will be listening to. Okay? So
Yeah,
I'm listening to port 3734. For the terminals, each terminal can have different ports, but on my case, all my terminals are using port 734.
Okay.
And there is no problem with that. You can have hundreds of terminals using the same port. Now, let me show you one more thing. You used to program the clock, Veronica, using SynDLL, right?
Right.
Okay. Let me show you how SYserver is programming my clock. I'm going to hit the programming button right here. And first of all, you see that two terminals are being programmed at the same time. The second thing that you see is that it takes about 5 seconds to program the terminal. Not 20 seconds, not 1 minute, not 2 minutes like it's working with SynDLL or Syncomm.
Yeah.
I'm downloading the full application to the clock within 5 seconds and in parallel. So if I have 100 terminals connected to SYserver, all of the terminals will be programmed at the same time. Any questions so far? In Spanish, in English?
Yes, I have one. I'm just imagining the scenario where the system is up and running with the customer, and the user is going to have not this interface that we're seeing right now, but our, in this case, our software. So we can include all the different options for programming in our software. So our software needs to communicate with SYserver in order to send the commands like you're doing right now with the clicking different buttons for the programming and everything. So is the way that it is? I mean, our system will need to send commands to the SYserver, so it will send the actual programming commands to the terminals?
Well, if you are going to use SYserver, then you will need to have this interface available for the customer. However, you don't have to have it running on the screen. You can have it running as a service, and you can automate SYserver to program the clock whenever you want. I have an automation screen here where I can create an activity such as where is it? Programming. And I can define on which day, configure what day I will send the programming tables, between what date and what time, and how often, the interval time. So I can automate this procedure for you. And again, you can run it as a service. No one will see it. It will be on the server. The only piece that will communicate with your application is the DLL, which again, it will be seamless. No one will see it. Only if there is a problem and you like to troubleshoot the problem with the clock, then you can bring up the interface for SYserver and deal with the problem. And when you're done, you're closing the interface and the service will still be running and function with your database.
Okay.
So what I'm offering to you here is to use an existing tool that we wrote that's working perfectly with our terminals without the need of writing an interface between your software and our clock from communication perspective. The only thing that you will need to write is the DLL that will implement the transaction and reply to queries.
Okay, so let's put an example for, let's say that the user wants to change the display on one terminal from department 1 to department 2. All the interface for doing that, it's something that we'll be programming into our software. Once that he changed the text that it will read department 2 instead of department 1, he will click a button to say, go ahead and do the change on that specific terminal. So within our software, we need to create a command within the DLL that you're talking about. So it will be sent to the SYserver, and then it will create all the text or all the file with the programming of the terminal, and the actual SYserver will send the programming to the terminal.
Well, you're talking about changing on the clock application design. For example, you gave an example of department 1 or 2, or maybe the main message when you click in, instead of seeing entrance, you want to see entrada. You're talking about these changes, correct?
Yes, correct.
How often are you going to change the clock application for an existing customer? Is it every day, once a year?
No, it's not gonna be every day. I understand what you're saying. You know, once it's programmed for the first time, it will stay there for 3, 4, 6 months, something like that.
Okay, so if once in 6 months you will need to update the clock application, you can bring up instantly the SYserver interface and click Tier 2, which is update the clock application on the clock, or programming. It's only 5 seconds, as you've seen. So there is no way to communicate with the clock from within your software if SYserver is working in listen mode with our terminals, because the terminals will be most likely busy talking with our server and will not accept your communication command from your software. So what I'm asking you is to open the software, our software, the SYserver, and use our communication buttons to update the clock application.
Okay.
Now, if you're talking about different updates, such as, let's say there is a list of 50 departments in the clock that the customer can select from, and you want to remove 2 and add new 3 departments, and edit maybe some other department in the table, and then you want to update the clock. So there are 2 ways to do that. One way is to create an automation procedure that will run every hour, every 24 hours, every night, to download the new tables to the clock, or the new updates. The other way is to do it manually, just by coming here and click Tier 2 or Tier 3 or programming, and it will push the new tables to the clock. Is that clear?
Yes, it's very clear. Yeah, it is very clear. I just throw that question so I can have everything clear on the way that's going to be working. So in this case, it is something that if we need to program the terminals and everything, this is through the SYserver. And once that is configured and already set, we just leave it, run up and running, and our software is going to be communicating through the databases using our DLL for the validations and everything.
Correct. One more feature that I would like to show you is the option to automatically program terminals that are in no programming mode. Whenever you get a new terminal from us, there is no application in the clock. it says no prog on the clock display. Once you open the clock box and you take out the clock from the box and you plug it into your network and you put the correct IP addresses for this specific network and the IP address for the server, the clock will start communicating with SYserver automatically. It will tell the SYserver that there is no application, and SYserver will download the application automatically to the server without the need from you to be part of the process. So it's kind of plug and play for our terminals.
Okay, so there is a broadcast going on all the time looking for, let's say, new terminals.
Correct. No, actually the terminal, when the terminal has no prog, it will tell the server, hey, do you have an application for me? And then the server will reply back with the files, with the table.
Oh, okay.
So most of the activity between the terminals to the server will be initiated by the clocks.
Okay.
Now, for easy troubleshooting, we have a very detailed log folder that you will probably want to look at once you're starting programming your DLL. And under this folder, there are a bunch of log files per terminal, per activity. So there is the buffer of the terminal log file, there is the buffer of the DLL log file, and there is a communication in DLL log file, very similar to what you, Veronica, used to see in Syncomm.
Yeah.
That's about it for now for SYserver. Unless you have any further questions, as the next step is to send you a demo DLL that we have wrote for bb.net, so you can get a better understanding of what you should expect to receive from us and what we expect to receive back from you in order to communicate with our terminals.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. The next step, like you're saying, it's for us to start and place a lab. I just need to ask Veronica if she has any documentation on the SYserver. ¿Tienes algo de documentación, Verónica?
Sobre esto no, nada más sobre el Syncomm.
Okay. She does not have any documentation. Okay. Let's see.
We will send you.
Tengo una duda. Con respecto a los archivos de programación o de configuración, que son los .rdj, no sé si se puedan hacer aquí igual que en el Syncomm.
The files are RDY files.
What's the question?
She's not sure if she can use the same files.
Oh, absolutely, Veronica. Let me show you.
Okay.
When you go to default terminal settings, this is where you select the clock application that you built by Syncomm. So if I have Syncomm right here, and I created an application like you did, and the name of the application is 780 Altec FN780 WSP, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the application that I've created with Syncomm, and I want to use SYserver to program this application. So this is what I do. Go to SYserver, and I click on this 3-point button, and I browse into Syncomm. Syncomm 609, Frog, 780 Altec. This is the same application that you can see here, 780 Altec. And then instead of selecting the WSP file that you used to do with the Syncomm, where is it, the WSP file? I can see it. Do you see it? Oh, because the file name that it's looking is only RDY. Instead of selecting the WSP file, I'm selecting the dir 001 right here, which is the first directory of the programming, and then I'm selecting the dir 002 and dir 003. Syncomm 609, Frog, 780 Altec, dir 002, and the third one will be dir 003. These are the three files that you need to select from your project in order to be able to program the clock from SYserver. Now, each dir file includes certain RDY files that the SYserver will program. Let me show you the project.
Okay.
Under Syncomm 609, Frog, 780 Altec, and here is the first one. And here you see that there are 1, 2, 3 tables: the MPS, the JPR, and the JPL. dir 002 includes several other tables, and dir 03 is empty. There are no tables in dir 003. And the way to decide what files will be in each directory is to go to the project and click Project, Portion of Project, and then Portion 1 is dir 002, and Portion 2 is dir 003.
Okay.
This is where I see all the tables from my project, and I can select which ones to move to the right, and they will be entered to my dir 002. So if I select only the, let's say, messages for file, and I click OK and save, I'm going to show you that dir 002 includes only 3 files, and before there were plenty of other files. And if I go back to the project and include all of the files and save, now you will see that dir 002 has all the other file RDY tables from my project. This is what correlates to these 3 buttons. Programming will take all 3 dir 001, 2, and 3. dir 2 will send only dir 002, and dir 3 will send only dir 003. The reason we divided the project to up to 3 pieces is, let's say you want to send an update to the clock every midnight only for department table. So what we will do, we'll take the department table, we'll put it in dir 02 or 03, and we'll create an automation that will send this specific table to the clock every 24 hours instead of pushing the whole project to the clock every 24 hours. Does that make sense?
Very much.
Sorry?
¿Está bien?
Sí, solo me queda una duda más. ¿Desde aquí puedo editar yo estos archivos o lo tengo que hacer desde Syncomm?
she wants to use those files, or she has to take it from Syncomm, but it doesn't matter. She can take it from Syncomm.
You can only build the project with Syncomm, and then use SYserver to push these tables to the clock.
Okay.
Or she can do it from Syncomm if she wants to.
No, once SYserver is running
Oh,
and communicating with the terminal, she cannot program the clock within Syncomm unless she stops the listen option and then program it from Syncomm.
Mm-hmm.
So
now,
Eso, ¿hemos contestado su pregunta, Verónica?
Sí. Sí.
Okay, gracias. Desculpa, Iris. Desculpa,
no, I was gonna. Yeah, I was gonna ask if, just I will believe that the best thing is going with SYserver. I mean, it's a more powerful tool, and if we can avoid, keep using Syncomm, that'll be the best thing to do, no?
absolutely. The only reason you will need Syncomm is to initially create the clock application for the clock, and then you can have the project being sent to the customer site, to the server, point SYserver to these files, so it can push these files to the clock, and from this point on, you will only use SYserver. Or if you need to make changes to the project, you will need to use Syncomm to update the project. However, I can teach you how to change the project tables without having Syncomm.
Why they don't use Syncomm? They have already written. It's already done.
So what kind of database do you have on your software? Is it SQL or
Yes,
Paradox?
good.
It's SQL, yes.
Okay. All right, so go ahead.
No, I just send our email addresses for Veronica and myself for so you can have those in case that you need to send the documentation or any files or whatever.
Okay.
Una última pregunta, disculpen. Anteriormente, si tú bajas la información desde Syncomm, se baja en un archivo .dat, me parece. ¿Desde aquí se baja hacia un archivo .dat o se baja hacia alguna base de datos?
The files that you take from Syncomm, she said if it's .net, but it's not .net from the Syncomm.
What is the question?
The files from Syncomm, she said if she's taking the files from Syncomm, .net, .net, and then move it to the SYserver. I don't.
Yeah, she's talking. Yeah, she's talking on the Syncomm. On the Syncomm, the files are extension DAT.
The Syncomm clock application is RDY.
Pero cuando bajas las transacciones, cuando haces collect.
Oh, the collect DAT.
When you pull the terminals, you get files with extension DAT, and she's asking if with SYserver we'll be getting the same.
Okay, so let me step back a little bit and remind you that when SYserver is online or offline, when it's online, you will get the data, and
directly in the
data will hit directly the database. So you don't need the collect.dat. But if you don't want, let's say you don't want to write DLL at this point, you only want to listen to clocks and receive only data, you can do that as well. Let me show you. If you go to default, you can see that the data is also being written to this path, exactly like Syncomm.
Okay.
C, program files, CNL, SYserver.net, data, collect.dat. And if you open that folder, it's under program files, CNL, SYserver.net, data. You will see the exact same thing as you see from Syncomm. You will see all the transactions starting with the D and the clock ID, and then the firmware and the function key, and then the badge number and another transaction. So if you want to work that way, that's also an option. Is that answering your question, Veronica?
Yes, está bien.
Good.
Pero aquí la intención, Verónica, es de que si se va a estar en línea con cada transacción que se pase en la terminal, se va a validar y automáticamente se va a integrar a la base de datos. O sea, ya no vas a tener que hacer el proceso de revisión de los archivos .dat.
Sí, bueno, mi duda era de que en Syncomm pues se baja así, no se baja a una base de datos. Entonces aquí se baja. ¿Perdón?
A la base de datos a la que estamos hablando es ya la tuya, la del sistema de nosotros.
Sí, o sea, vamos a hacer nosotros como la integración a nuestro sistema, pero ya que se pase toda esta información directamente a nuestra base de datos.
Exactamente, con cada checada del empleado.
Okay.
Now, again, in order to have the clock, one more thing about the TCP/IP connection. In order to have the clock connected to my server, of course, it must have a valid IP address on the network. And the second thing is, it must have also the server IP. So let me show you. Clock number 89, for example, is right here. This is the one that communicates with my SY server, 10.10.10.89. This is the subnet mask, and this is the gateway, and this is the port of the clock. But now I have also to put the server IP address, 10.10.11.40. And you can see that this is here, 10.10.11.40. This is my PC IP address. So the terminal will know where to push the transactions or the queries or the heartbeat. And the port that it will use is port 3734. Okay?
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, ya creo que eso es todo lo que hemos planeado en presentar. ¿Hay cualquier otras dudas?
Yes, up to how many terminals is the SY server capable of handling? I mean, I will, because I'm seeing all the configurations, you can have, let's say, 2 computers running the service and split the number of terminals that are, communicating with each one of those SY servers. No?
We have installations with up to 200 terminals per SY server instance. So this is what our recommendations for large installations, up to 200 terminals per instance.
Okay. Okay, so right now it's one SY server is enough for the customer.
For 60 terminals, absolutely yes.
Okay. Okay, well, next step then will be to receive the different documentation in the SY server itself and start, making a lab, start playing with it, start understanding everything, and start interchanging emails with questions.
Sounds right to me. I will send a link to download the SYserver from our FTP, and also some documents and a sample DLL code that we wrote for using VB.NET. And then, Veronica, after installing SYserver, if you have any questions at any point of time, you can send it in Spanish to support at synel-usa.com. You will see that email address in my email too. And most likely, Avi will be the person who will reply back in Spanish with the information to answer your question.
Okay.
So we'll send you all the documentation and that you need and the link.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, all.
You're welcome.
Just a small question.
Thank you.
Is it a small question about your project? Is something? What type of a project is it?
What type of a project? This is a time and attendance project. The customer is a supermarket chain. They have headquarters, and they have right now, I believe, 45 stores with locations on the north part of Mexico, plus distribution centers, some training locations that they have. So in this case, they're going to be using one terminal port store, and it'll give us a total of around 50 to 55 terminals. And the idea is to have one SQL server on their main offices, and then we'll place one SY server, to start doing the communication with the terminals.
Okay.
The software is something that we developed. It's in Spanish, and we developed that back in 1993, and it was based on DOS. So it's been, upgraded every, with new platform. Right now it's running on SQL, and we have a web module and everything. So it's everything is in Spanish, and that's why we have very mature software.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much, and we'll keep in touch.
Sí,
Take care.
Ok, espero su email y con gusto voy a dar seguimiento y que estamos en contacto.
Okay, gracias.
Okay,
Gracias.
buen día. Gracias a ustedes.
Igualmente, bye.
Gracias.
Bye-bye.